Warriors Corner will begin in 1 minute. Please silence your cell phones. Thank you.
All right, good morning. I want to welcome everyone here today for the first Warriors Corner for this AUSA. I'm Colonel James Crocker, and along with Colonel Brett Avesian from Army Material Command, we're going to discuss the impacts of continuous transformation and optimization on the Army's organic industrial base. So over the past several years, the Army has undergone a significant period of evolution. We've recognized the need to adapt faster, innovate more effectively, and fundamentally change how we deliver capabilities to our warfighters. This isn't simply about acquiring new equipment, it's about a holistic, continuous process of improvement. That is continuous transformation, driven by a rapidly evolving battlefield characterized by autonomous systems, pervasive sensors, and dual-use technology. Continuous transformation is essential for maintaining the relevancy, efficiency, and resilience of our organic industrial base at Army Material Command. In an era that is marked by rapidly evolving technology and changing global military requirements, as the nature of warfare shifts with increased emphasis on data, digital interoperability, and an agile supply chains, the OIB must continually adapt its processes, workforce skills, and technological infrastructure to meet these challenges. With an enduring history of supporting U.S. warfighters, the OIB is not only about repairing, maintaining legacy systems, it's also about looking forward to the strategic assets that drive innovation through sustained investments in new technologies and modernization processes. Its ability to rapidly scale and adapt production capabilities is essential to ensure that our forces maintain a decisive advantage in both conventional and emerging areas of war. Continuous transformation is the engine that's driving modernization in the organic industrial base. We're not just updating individual components, we're fundamentally re-architecting what the OIB is to make it more resilient, scalable, interoperable, and secure. At the heart of continuous transformation is a commitment to modernization that goes beyond one-time upgrades. It's a dynamic process where lessons from day-to-day operations from long-term strategic adjustments. By incorporating advanced digital tools such as real-time analytics, machine learning for predictive maintenance, and additive manufacturing, the OIB will streamline its operations and reduce repair cycle times, overhaul requirements, and its production capabilities. This not only improves efficiency and reduces costs, but also ensures that critical material is available when and where it's needed. So I mentioned I'm James Crocker. That was the opening that was supposed to come from Steph Hoagland, who was unable to be with us here. He traveled. So I've read her remarks probably not as well as she would, or as eloquently as she does. She's our OIB Modernization Task Force lead and does a great job for this at AMC. So I'm the Supply Chain Management Director at Military Deputy. And if we can go to the next slide, please. And part of the SCMD is we oversee the OIB, our workload, and then we work with the OIB modernization team for how we transform. And on the slide, you'll see some illustrative examples of things that we have going forward. And I'm not going to try to belabor you and walk you through the slide. You can we'll talk through some of the examples either as I go through it, as Colonel Brett Avesian does go through his discussion in a few minutes as well. So for my example, before I came to my job as the Mil Dep for SCMD, I was the commander for Tobyhanna Army Depot in Northeast Pennsylvania, where we do our C5 ISR sustainment for the Army. which does a lot of critical things. Like last year, we cut the ribbon cutting on the ability to produce printed circuit boards and do surface mount capable technology in the microelectronics arena. Today, we're continuing to push that forward. My side gig is really the SCMD job. My main job is to push the OIB into manufacturing small, attritable UAS, right? So we're looking at doing a different way than we have before. Traditionally, what we would do is we would take a program of record, we drop it into a depot, and there we utilize it. But we realize that's not agile. It's not what we need for the future, and we have to change how we do business inside our organic industrial base. And so Sky Foundry is what we're calling this, is the ability to use a distributed manufacturing method across multiple OIB sites, and you'll see one or two called out on this chart, to be able to get to scale, and we're talking a lot of scale, to be able to produce low-cost drones for our soldiers. With the help of industry, some of it with our internal Army stuff, but we're not going to go there alone. So we're looking at 5 primary sites. JMTC Rock Island, which is our advanced manufacturing center. Obviously, we'll use there for our chassis and our frames. Tobyhanna Army Depot, we'll do all of our internal electronics manufacturing, so circuit cards, brushless motors. Eventually, we're thinking controllers and goggles in future years, but for the initial push, propulsion electronics essentially. Red River Army Depot, and this is where we talk about reimagining the OIB, and Brett will talk more about that as he gets to his piece a little bit. But Red River Army Depot sits along a major lithium deposit across the United States. And we see the future of Red River being able to work with that private industry to be able to quickly advance in the lithium-ion battery field for drones. And they'll also do our propellers as well, because they already have some capability there for our ability to do injection molding. And then finally, at Bluegrass Army Depot, we'll use that as our innovation hub, a place where industry can come in and work with us to rapidly prototype and scale and create designs that get out to our soldiers based upon the environments that they face day to day, taking soldier-centered design feedback back into that continuous do loop of innovation and reimagination of what it should be. So this is a completely different process than we have in the past. It leverages the strengths that we do in the OIB, so we think we'll be able to go more quickly there, but we're not going to be able to do it alone. We're going to leverage partners like our OSW Manufacturing Innovation Institutes to come in and show us with some of their consortium of partners how we can do AI into our workforce, how we can use sensors, reduce the amount of manual touch labor required in that production capability, so we can keep our costs low, and really move out on this as we try to achieve scale. But again, totally different way of looking at how we've traditionally looked at our OIB. Getting into the manufacturing side of things is also not necessarily something that you think about when you get into the organic industrial base, and a place that we're absolutely going to have to think about how do we partner with industry, how do we let small companies come in and leverage our industrial capability so they have a foothold into immediately with a prototype to be able to scale up. Those are kind of things that we think the OIB have got a strong position that allow us to work together as the greater defense industrial base. And with that, I'll pass it over to Brett Avesian, and he'll talk through what he does for us.
Okay, thanks, James. Good morning, everyone. Again, Brett Avesian, and this is my 4th time with AMC since 2011, and I just recently returned from overseas. Prior to this assignment, though, I did command Bluegrass Army Depot in Kentucky. So my return, just a few months, well, August, really, I started this assessment. So what we've done was, you heard the Secretary this morning talk about how we need to break through some of the bureaucracy and reach speed for agility. And to that end, he had ordered the Army to conduct an assessment of our entire industrial base. And so that assignment has been fallen to the Army Material Command Analysis Group led by Dr. Chris Hill. So as a former OIB commander just returning from overseas, AMC thought that it was appropriate I join this team to help guide that assessment and bring the operational commander's perspective to help guide where we go. So I can't get into the entire details of the assessment because it's still ongoing. We owe a briefing and an outbrief to Army senior leaders by the end of the month. However, I can tell you what we've done, how we've done it so far, and where we're going next in broad terms. So to begin with, at Bluegrass Army Depot, its main mission is to store, maintain, distribute, surveil, and demill conventional munitions. And during that time in command there, we found some challenges with the age of our depot. It just turned 80 when I took command, and a lot of the buildings and infrastructure were still World War II era. I mean, even some of the water pipes were still made out of wood, and just trying to upgrade that and find the funding to do that and modernize was quite challenging. So, part of what we've done as far as this assessment is Dr. Hill had organized a small team of the analysis group to go around, and in the first 30 days, we visited every one of the 23 organic industrial base sites to include their higher headquarters at the life cycle management commands. And quite frankly, we made these a non-attributional interviews with the team. We used some technology to record the conversations and then used AI to turn those transcripts into an interim report, if you will, to help us cut down on the amount of time it would take to do this, because we only have a very limited period of time. And then what we're doing is we provided an interim report so far on our findings to the Army senior leadership, and we're finalizing those now. And again, as you heard the Secretary this morning, one of the key items that's come out of that so far is our ability to partner with industry. We cannot upgrade and modernize at the speed we need to without industry's help. So one of the things that we've done is we've partnered with a number of industry partners. We've assessed over 250 potential partners and actually met with and interviewed 12 industry partners to this point. Right now, what we're doing is planning and scheduling site visits to bring those industry partners to every one of our depots, so we can give them a tour and understand what we have available, and then have them come back to us and provide ideas, recommendations, and options on how we can create those partnerships. So those visits and those sites will be coming up in the short term here. We're actually in the process of scheduling a number of them right now. And the first ones we're going to focus on are right now, Bluegrass Army Depot is one, Anniston Army Depot, Pine Bluff Arsenal, and Red River Depot. And to even focus that further, we've identified 4 potential pilot areas that we think we can get quick wins with and gain some traction and momentum and build from there. So some of those pilots that we're looking at are partnering with third-party logistics companies that have interest in temporary and short-term storage. As we assessed our bases, we found that there is a lot of underutilized storage space that we have, both indoor, in unused ammunition bunkers, containers, and open field. And that makes very attractive places for third-party logistics companies to want to come and do short-term storage with us. A lot of larger companies tend to not want to get into those short-term storage situations because that requires capital investment to build facilities that just aren't in their best interest. And being on a military depot in one of those ammunition bunkers, you cannot get much more secure than that. So that's an attractive area that we're looking at, partnering with some of the third-party logistics companies on. Other things we're taking a look at is potentially building data centers and partnering with companies that specialize in doing that. And again, building those data centers on an Army depot inside of one of the most secured places in the world helps us with not only maintaining some of that capability, but it provides an opportunity for us to partner with them and generate some revenue. And using that revenue will help us offset some of our indirect costs and right-size our operation and help us build speed in the modernization efforts. And then, as James had mentioned earlier, we're talking to potential companies about defense production sites and critical mineral processing sites in order to help us reduce reliance on foreign suppliers and capitalize on what assets we have here in the U.S. and minimize some supply chain disruptions. So the benefits of doing that are a number of things. So number one, Obviously, it's generating new revenue streams that we don't normally have access to, given the way that our budgeting and processes are set up in the current day. Number two, it maximizes the use of our facilities, our underutilized facilities, and our underutilized labor, and keeps them working on areas that are in their expertise. It keeps them practiced. It keeps them relevant. It keeps them working and make sure that we have opportunity to engage and educate and train our workforce and keep them modern. It also enables future development of technology like advanced manufacturing and automation and AI. So that's where we're hoping our industry partners can come in and not only with these site visits, help keep us trained and ready, but also provide us solutions to get to that end. Because again, like I said, many of our facilities, almost all of them were built in World War II era. And as we stated earlier, it's just not feasible to get to where we need to go at the speed without the help of our industry partners. So as we go forward with our assessment and we make our recommendations to Army senior leadership, we're going to be provided guidance and direction on moving forward. And we will attack that in the best and possible way we can to ensure that our OIB is modernized, postured, and ready to surge and capable. Okay, that's all I've got.
Awesome. And so the plan for us inside supply chain management is once Dr. Hill and Brett's team complete that assessment, we'll use that to inform how we look at workloading our depots and arsenals. So again, interim strategies, obviously for the public-private partnerships, how we look at emerging systems coming out, and then how we rework them and look at different constructs, similar to like we're doing in Sky Foundry, and think differently about how we operate our organic industrial base. All right, so we didn't talk a whole lot. We wanted to leave a lot of time for questions and answers. So if there's anything that either Colonel Avesian or I can answer, we'll be happy to field those questions now.
Hi, Cal Biesecker with Defense Daily. Going back to Sky Foundry, where would the designs come from to manufacture these drones, number one? And second, is industry lacking in the production capacity to get you what you need? Is that why you would be trying to fill a void there? Thanks.
Great question. So I think twofold. So one, design questions, a multitude of locations. So we're using some things that were designed by DevCom. So our first few products, we looked at some DevCom designs that we have government TDP and IP on as a way, but I don't think that's going to be the entire way we go forward. We're also talking to multiple industry partners on how we can either license designs from them or how we can go into public-private partnerships with them, and they can leverage our ability to either assemble right now while we build the capability to manufacture, and then our manufacturing capability later on to become one of their manufacturing suppliers. So a multitude of different variations. We're not tied to anything. Our goal is to really get the capacity. And to answer your second question is, we believe that it will take the greater defense industrial base to accomplish the scale that we're going to need in drone production when it comes to not just the Army, but the greater Department of Defense's needs. And that there's some places that I don't know that we're necessarily going to be the right fit for. Your more expensive, more exquisite drones is probably better left to an OEM. But things that we can do relatively repeated, low-cost designs and push out to the field and work with soldiers to innovate, I think that's places that we find a good niche for us, but only a part of a niche of the greater environment, not nowhere near the level of magnitude that's going to take to get us to a competitive space with our near-peer adversaries.
Hi, John Klein, Johnson Controls. How are you integrating the cybersecurity and network resiliency into your digital backbone of your industrial base, or is that a later phase of your transformation process?
So that is actually one of the lines of effort under the OIB modernization process. I think it's LOE 6, if I'm right, LOE 4. But it's the AMC G6 owns the industrial control network requirements. So actually at Tobyhanna Army Depot, where I previously commanded, right, a lot of nexus there. Tobyhanna is actually the action arm for the installation of the industrial control network, the design methodology, and then they have a configuration control board that's managed by AMC that any of the OT is going to come onto that. We use that as to make sure it's what level of threat is it, how do we mitigate that threat, and how do we get it on. Some stuff we acknowledge, probably will never be able to come onto an Army backbone just because of the threat to it. But the stuff that we can get on, what layer of control and how much access it has, we think we can mitigate through a good industrial control network. But that's definitely a place that's we acknowledge we have to get into relatively quickly. In fact, the first ICN is getting rolled at Toby this year, with I think 3 next year and going forward. So the idea is to move as quickly as possible with that. We would definitely leverage that in things like Sky Foundry, because we think that's a place that we want to get into advanced manufacturing techniques, and you have to have that level of backbone to be able to do it properly.
Hi, Dan Shear from Inside Defense. Couple questions. I guess, so for the different OIB facilities that you mentioned, will there be public-private partnerships in all of those, or some of those, or sort of, are you going through the process to decide how that's going to be done? And also, in terms of some of the modernization, is this funding going to come from the working capital fund? Will it come from reconciliation? Will it come from the base budget? Like, what's the main way that these initiatives are going to be funded?
So I'll speak for the Sky Foundry stuff, and I'll let Brett talk about the other public-private partnerships. So the P3s we're looking at in the Sky Foundry, we're welcoming all comers. We're talking to small startups that are doing motor designs in Maryland. We're talking to folks that are doing some interesting stuff in academia when it comes to energetics introduced into UAS design frames. We're talking, so people that want to. If you're interested in a public-private partnership, I'd reach out to AMC. We'll put you in the right place. If it's at the depot level, we'll field you that depot commander or that arsenal commander and let their team work with you. If it's a greater, larger, that crosses multiple locations, we'll probably manage that Army Material Command, and like we're doing on a couple right now, so we can properly source that public-private partnership. But we're definitely not turning anyone away. What I always say when it looks at public-private partnerships is what's the value position for both sides? What's the value position side for AMC and the value position side for your company? And then how can we leverage that to get us to a mutually agreed upon location, right? And I think that's the important thing there.
And I'll just add on, we are not limiting ourselves to any one particular OIB site. It's going to be where it best makes sense. We are starting short term with focusing on 4 key ones. However, the intent later on, probably in the spring at some point, we're considering conducting a larger industry day type of scenario where we bring the depots, arsenals, and ammunition plants together with potential partners and conducting industry days and see where there is interest and see where it makes sense.
But back to the P3. If you have a thing now that doesn't fit in one of the things that's exactly right, that's fine. That you were talking, that Colonel Avesian was talking about, or that I'm talking about. If there's a niche that you think you can fill inside the organic industrial base, reach out to us. We'll get you in contact with the right folks and make sure that they can start that discussion with you and put you with the right experts. And as far as funding piece, so we have submitted our funding requirements to Army senior leaders. I think it's going to be a hybrid strategy of how they fund it, and I don't think it's completely decided yet. So I'll leave that for now. But I believe it's not going to come out of the working capital fund. I'll say that much. We don't believe you can manage a program like this inside the working capital fund and not have significant issues.
Good morning, Steve McKee with Firestorm. Real quick question, Colonel Crocker. You mentioned that Sky Foundry is looking at interoperability. Can you talk about how the Army OIB sites are working interoperably with the other services OIB sites as it relates to Sky Foundry? Thank you.
So I'd say it's very nascent, very early on, but there's a lot of discussion. So we were at the DoD peer-to-peer a month and a half ago down in Georgia at Robins Air Force Base. And the discussion there is, I don't know of another service that's trying to get into the level of manufacturing. So Sky Foundry's intent is to vertically integrate all components of a small UAS except for optics, right? And so what that will do is that will not only allow us to just build drones, that's good, but what's also is how do we inform the supply chain of not just us, but the PEO, other services, companies that are working with the PEO, can they leverage our motor manufacturing capability? Can they manage our circuit card manufacturing, our ability to do injection molding for propellers or print our chassis or frames at scale? how can they leverage that as they go forward, right? So I think that informing the supply chain is how we will become interoperable. And then also we have to tie this together with a overarching repository that controls that, so that it's able to be accessed by DoD partners and industry alike. So if you're a soldier sitting in Hawaii and you have the capability to 3D print a frame, you should be able to get to our repository as long as it's a government-owned IP, right? And we can legally do it and let them print that frame out, so that they can just repair it, or they can repair arms on it. That's where we're moving towards. I will not try to say we have all the answers yet, but that's what our end state will look like.
Hi, Valerie Insena with Breaking Defense. Have a question about the pilot program, the potential pilot program that you mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about how that would work? Is the Army just essentially kind of functioning as a landlord here, where data companies, third-party logistics companies would be essentially like renting space from you guys, or is it more involved than that from your side? And you talked a little bit about this as a potential revenue-generating opportunity. Do you have any estimates about how much that could potentially be?
Yeah, so as far as the estimates right now, couldn't tell you, because we haven't really gotten down to conducting the site visits and getting people on the ground to see exactly what that could look like. And then as far as the first part of your question, we're not limiting it to any particular lane. These are just ideas and concepts that we're fleshing out right now. And as we bring the industry partners in, it may not be just one piece. We may be able to bundle package different types of those pilots on multiple installations at the same time. So that's the intent right now, and that's where we're going with that. We just haven't gotten to that point because we're so early in this process.
Jeremiah Cushman, Janes. Could you provide a little more details on the critical minerals piece? How does the OIB fit into enhancing, I can't remember the word, that piece?
So, well, I'll take part. James can jump on this. So part of it is we already have organic industrial base sites with skilled labor that already work with energetics and other things and the critical minerals part would fall into aligning with their skill sets and how we could utilize potentially our workforce to help augment that critical minerals processing. Again, nothing's off the table. We're open and exploring, and we're hoping industry can help provide us some ideas on how to do that better as well.
Yeah, I would say into the drone space, what we're looking at is those critical minerals, the lithium-ion, I don't want to mess this up, but the magnets, how about that? That way I don't mess up a chemical name that I'm not good at pronouncing. So the magnets, right? What critical minerals do we have to have at that? Working with those companies, how do we help? How do we facilitate them to get there? Can they do that? Either to me, it doesn't matter where it comes from because I'm just trying to get the product on this site. But what Brett's trying to work on is really, can we partner with that? Can that be done on an industrial site? Use that as a way to reduce cost or risk to a private entity, either through enhanced use leases or through a public-private partnership. I think to his point, we're pretty open to whatever agreements work for both sides.
Hey, T.W. Williams here, over here in the corner. Hey, I'm Colonel Retired T.W. Williams, Director of Army Programs from Amoresco. A number of energy service companies are here. We were excited last year that I think Rock Island was going to put out a multiple award task order contract to get after some of the resiliency projects on your OIBs. Question one is, what's the status of that multiple award task order contract? We're anxious to get out and help your installations out there. And two, you also have an approach through the ERSIP program too. A lot of us were able to visit Anniston recently in the process of doing that one. Could you just give us an update on where those initiatives are with the utilization of the ERSIP program and also the status of your multiple award task order contract? Over.
So unfortunately, that is the problem with not having Steph Hoagland here, because she could walk you through that like top to bottom. That's a little bit outside of our purview. But what I can do is if you get me after this, I can get your information, and we can take that as a question, and we can absolutely have our experts get back to you. All right. So if no other questions, I think we'll close this out. Oh, more?
Yeah, Cal Biesecker again with Defense Daily. Just a clarification, when you talked about vertically integrating your manufacturing, all but the objects, I think you said, what did you mean?
The cameras and
So,
like
the payload.
sensors.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. We don't we believe looking at some studies that there is not enough risk there for to get into that space. Wicked hard to do. Constantly changing and probably not the best place for the OIB into at this time. All right, so without any further ado, I think that we're getting towards the end of our time. We appreciate everyone coming out today. Hope we didn't stumble through this too much with you, but a lot of great opportunities inside our organic industrial base. Colonel Avesian and I will stand by the side here if you have any questions or want our contact information. We will be happy. If we can't answer your question, we'll link you into the right person who can and make sure we move in that direction. Again, I think our organic industrial base is looking to partner with our greater defense industrial base to bring the best readiness to our warfighters around the globe. So thank you much again for your time.
Thank you.
$12.50. Evolving counter UAS defense protection in the new era at home and abroad. Warriors Corner will begin in 1 minute. Please go ahead and silence all cell phones. Thank you.
All right. Oh, that jolted a few of you. Hey, well, welcome as we address one of the most topical issues facing our Army now and into the future. I'm Dave Stewart, the Director of DAMO Fires, so all things long-range fires and integrated air missile defense for the Army, to include counter-UAS and the Army's way forward. We've assembled a great panel today that we look forward to your questions, but we've got the right individuals with the right expertise to answer your questions. So, very quickly, we'll go into additional introductions.
Hey, good afternoon. Colonel Neil Lape. I'm General Stewart's military deputy for DAMO Fires in the Army G357.
I'm Colonel Mark Polini. I'm the military deputy for Fire's Future Capability Directorate. And as we reorganize the Transformation and Training Command, the Futures Capabilities Directorate is responsible for all the concepts, experimentation, and requirements for the Fire's portfolio.
Guy Overton, I'm the Deputy for Acquisition Systems Management at PO Missiles and Space, but I'm also the project lead for our counter-UAS product office.
Glenn Hankey, I'm the Air Defense Artillery Commandant at Fort Sill and Chief of Air Defense Artillery.
Or can we press forward with the first slide? So we show you this slide to help frame the problem set. What you'll see across the top, of course, are all the threats for groups 1 through 5 when we think about UAS, as well as you move on as it connects to integrated air missile defense, and you talk about all the breadth of the threat to include fixed wing, rotary wing, land attack cruise missiles, and then getting into the suite of TBMs, which I'll argue and I'll show on the left-hand side, you're really focused on the protection aspect. One that I would argue is everybody's responsibility. It is skill agnostic, and you can see the Army's approach on the lower left, looking at soldier, unit, common, and dedicated capabilities when we start looking at the greater threats. Additionally, on the right-hand side, you are looking at what I would argue is when you need skill-specific expertise to come in and to address those more dangerous threats that are larger and more challenging. That really begins with, certainly when we talk about the threat, groups 3, which you see shaded out in the middle as one of the most challenging threats. Right behind that is certainly swarms of 1s and 2. So I would say certainly 3 to 5 years ago, the Army was rightly focused on that middle threat, the group 3 one-way attack that was being used in the Middle East. I would argue too that the Army got ahead of that issue and that challenge and produced capability into the hands of warfighters that addressed that challenge. Then on the backside, we started seeing groups 1 and 2 used in a swarm. So by themselves can be very deadly, but then used together in larger formations and working together, they pose a threat almost equal to that of a group 3 one-way attack. One of the last things I'd point out, and what I distinguish between the chart on the left versus the chart on the right, is on the right, not only are the threats larger and more difficult, maybe not more difficult given the circumstances, but the engagements are higher risk. That's when you're talking about a threat of fratricide. That's when you're talking about mission failure causing greater damage to our forces. And so one of the areas that the Army is always looking to do, and we're going to talk specifically about counter-UAS today, is how we can protect and defend those assets that we are directed to, but do it in an affordable manner. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about threats next.
Thanks, sir. You know, I probably could talk for hours about this, about the enemy threat and the evolution, specifically over like the last couple of years. But before we talk about the counter-UAS capabilities, requirements, and .mil-PF implications, we kind of talk about the evolution of the small UAS threat that we've seen. I think nobody would argue here really about the prevalence of small UAS in the last 5 years, arguably, which has kind of changed the character of war. Why? Because they're cheap, very low production costs overall, very low casualty risks, right? Larger standoff distances, so not putting troops in harm's way. Arguably easier to train drone operators than combat soldiers. Technically, right, small UAS really have a small radar cross-section and lower signal emissions, right? So they're very difficult to detect as well as engage. Really a lot of potential overall to produce an asymmetric advantage on the battlefield, which I think everyone here has kind of seen in some conflicts over the last couple of years. Really as a result of observed employment and success, I think the small UAS threat is growing exponentially. Really no longer just about short-range tactical weapons overall, increased range and endurance tied with autonomy and artificial intelligence as well, have really produced a tactical, even strategic results within the last year. Attacks are becoming increasingly complex. Small UAS used with coordinated attacks such as cruise missiles and tactical ballistic missiles employed from several threat vectors as well make it very difficult for the defenders. I think technology also enables swarming attacks, which we've seen here recently, designed to overwhelm air defense and protection with mass, which has obviously its effects. I think operational spiderweb there you see in the slide in the middle is a great example of that. A very large number of autonomous UAS employed asymmetrically over thousands of miles against a very strategic Russian threat. With that, I'll hand it over to Colonel Mark Pliny to talk requirements, and I look forward to taking any of your questions.
So what I wanted to initially start off talking about is the capabilities development document that was recently approved by the Chief of Staff of the Army, and what we're calling is MSHORAD Inc. 4. So Maneuver SHORAD Inc. 4, and really what we're trying to do with this requirements document is really converge the best of breed from our counter UAS and our MSHORAD capabilities that we've fielded over the past 10 or so years. So we've learned a lot as you look at the Stout vehicle, which is the Stryker-based MSHORAD platform, and then you look at what we're doing with the MLIDS, the mobile lids capability in the counter UAS side. what we're trying to do is identify the best of breed capabilities to address the full spectrum of threats from Group 1 all the way up through fixed wing aircraft. So the approach that we're taking for it is we're moving away from a fully integrated vehicle, and what we're pursuing is a sled concept. So think of like a pallet or a sled that I could put in the back of any vehicle, whether it's an ISV, a Humvee, a JLTV, or even a technical vehicle like a Toyota truck, and I can have that self-contained capability that allows the maneuver commander to have a menu of options. And when I talk about menu of options, I'm talking about being able to pull off a radar, like an X-band radar, and put a KU band radar on, or pull a Coyote pod off and put a Stinger pod on, and the system itself or the pallet itself recognizes that and automatically changes the user interface for the operator to engage those threats. So the way that we're taking that is through an open hardware and software, really kind of a plug-and-play approach to it. So open APIs, so people can integrate into the platform itself relatively easy, and we're not having to spend time in both fiscally and in time to reintegrate the pallet as more and more capabilities come online. And then as General Stewart talked about, we also have, as part of our portfolio, unit and soldier common capabilities. So really what we're looking for there are applicable capabilities that are very intuitive and lessen the cognitive burden on a soldier. And then as we look at the various capabilities that are out there from a sensing perspective, you have acoustic sensors, you have bistatic sensors, you have active radar, you have EOIR cameras. So coming up with a way that we can fuse those at the platform and at the tactical edge, and then eventually bring that up into the cloud where we can do fusion across the entirety of the AOR. So as we look at capabilities, we want them obviously to be low cost, right? So we can't outprice ourselves, and they need to be scalable. And then the last piece I want to hit on is the low collateral defeat. And what low collateral defeat is, what we're trying to do, at least in the homeland, is identify capabilities that if I shoot a drone down or bring a drone down, it doesn't cause collateral effects on the ground and harm innocent bystanders. So that's generally speaking where we're going with the requirements, and I look forward to the question and answer period.
All right, so I feel like I just got the hardest task of not sounding redundant to my three teammates here. So for material solutions for what the Army's been doing based off the requirements, the operational need, we aligned ourselves with 5 lines of effort that you can see on the chart. We started, as General Stewart said, back in the CENTCOM days under Joint Urgent Operational Needs Statement, providing capability in the 2017 timeframe with MLIDS, mobile lids capability, fixed site lids capability to protect our forward operating bases and other critical assets in CENTCOM. What we learned was those assets, those products, those material solutions do really well. And so we took our knowledge from the JUON's efforts and funneled that into the next 2 lines of effort. A director requirement signed out by the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army for Homeland and Specified Fixed Site, protection of installations both in CONUS and OCONUS, as well as it formed the foundation for our counter-UAS batteries as well as those stood up. For Homeland Specified Fixed Site, we took the learning from the fixed site lids capabilities and provided that, but only the non-kinetic capabilities is what we're using there. So the sense, decide, and on the act features being the the non-kinetic. As we establish those, we're looking at how we better those protections over time, establish a baseline capability to a lot of installations, and then improve that fighting position over time. So we're continuously looking at how to make that counter-UAS protection capability better. That brings us over to the 3rd line of effort, the counter-UAS batteries. So there's 9 divisions that will have a counter-UAS battery. When I first took over the IFRCO a couple of years ago, we called these the division set. What we learned is we started to work closer with our requirements teammates is that it's not really a division set of equipment that's for the entire division, but it's batteries that provide the division commander the opportunity to protect his critical assets at whichever phase of the fight they're in. And he can move those around, but he cannot protect the entire division simultaneously. Even though it has mobile lids capabilities, it has FS lids capabilities, kinetic, non-kinetic, it still will not protect the entire footprint of a division. That generated, in conversation with my Fort Sill teammates and Damo Fires, of brigade and below capabilities that we then turned into our lines of effort 4 and 5, soldier and unit common capabilities. They're in the soldier common, kind of looking at those handheld technologies, or soldier wearable, soldier borne capabilities, so that they have the ability to utilize something that's attached to their body armor and still engage their primary weapon system simultaneously. And then unit common, looking for those capabilities that are components that we can latch on to existing vehicles in the motor pool today, because we do not want to overburden our warfighter systems with additional platforms or needing more soldiers to execute these missions. So to accomplish these final 2 lines of effort, and also to inform lines of effort 2 and 3, we have ongoing competitions. This year we've held 3 competitions. We're wrapping up our future counter-UAS fire control system competition to provide a replacement to FAD C2 under the umbrella of IBCS maneuver, Integrated Air Missile Defense Battle Management System maneuver. We'll finish that one here in the next few days probably. We completed the next gen counter-UAS missile competition. That announcement has been made that we're moving forward with Blue Halo from Air Environment, moving forward with that capability. And our team is out at YPG for the last few weeks, continuing on over the next couple of weeks, doing a soldier common competition, which we kicked off about a year ago to move that forward. So we have about 12 vendors out there showing us their kit. And if they're all good, we'll select all 12, because we need a lot of capability in the counter-UAS environment. We need capability that doesn't answer just an infantry squad protecting their systems, but a mobile brigade combat team, an armor brigade combat team, an MP squad providing convoy protection, a field artillery unit protecting their Paladin assembly area. So all that. And then as we move into the unit common, that brings us into the next year, where we've kicked off a unit common competition in May. We've received white papers from well over 100 industry partners that want to participate in this, and we are driving forward to a competition and wrap that up by the 3rd quarter of FY26. We're also going to have a radar competition. Not just used to talk about flat panel radars as we looked at making our counter-UAS battery capability better, but sensor competition, where I'm looking at either active, passive, acoustic, flat panel, 360. We're looking at everything, because all of this capability can fit into any one of our lines of effort. So I'm trying to gain the efficiency out of a competition to inform many different lines of effort. And then EW, electronic warfare, is our 3rd competition we're going to hold in this coming up FY. Also goal to complete by 26. So look forward to those coming out. And then I had one other thought I just dropped. Oh yeah, so competitions. So the last thing I want to say on competitions is that they'll be recurring, right? You heard that the threat's ever evolving. We need to ensure that we continuously outpace a threat. So we will have these competitions at least at an every 2-year cycle to make sure that we know and understand the capabilities that's out there from our industry partners, and that we continue to provide our warfighters the best capability so that we outpace that threat that's evolving, whether it be through tactics, techniques, and procedures, or through hardware material changes. So I'll hand off to General Hank.
So as we look at what we do with all the things that the other panel members have described, and kind of bring it all together, not just for the Air Defense Artillery branch, but also for the rest of the Army, starting with changing how we train and what we are training. So a couple of initiatives here. First, some of you may be familiar with the Joint Counter-UAS University at Fort Sill. We have 3 courses right now. There's an operator's course, a planner's course, and then the installation counter-UAS protection course. Now, these are not static courses. We are updating the instruction whenever we get feedback that we need to. We held a lessons learned forum. We're doing that twice a year, and our goal is within 30 days of those forums, we're updating the lesson plans. So trying to move very fast and dynamically and take what the operators out in the field are learning. Next, is one of the things that the core to this is creating sustainable training doctrine that can be used going forward. So for the counter UAS batteries, we've done is create a standard TC gunnery publication that captures all the counter UAS doctrine for gunnery that we've learned, much of which we learned in CENTCOM, and we took the basis of some qualification tables that we helped ARCENT build for their green sands and used that as the core of the doctrine that we have now. And additionally, but that addresses only the counter UAS battery. If we look at those capabilities that Mark and Guy discussed coming online in the next few years, particularly with unit and soldier common, our challenge was to create doctrine for a capability that doesn't exist yet. So what we've done inside of that TC is create what we're calling capability agnostic gunnery tables. So there is a tables 1 through 6 training strategy that you can apply to whatever capability gets fielded out there. We've published our first version of that, looking for feedback from units on how we can make it better in future implements. And then finally, we've created blocks of instruction for all of the Army's professional military education to give the foundational counter-UAS knowledge. Now, moving on to how we organize, Guy and Mark have kind of covered that with FY25. We're going to field 2 more this year, and then get to 9 total. And then as we look at increment 4, that'll provide us some additional opportunities, as Mark said, to converge those capabilities to where every existing SHARAD battery can be a counter UAS battery and vice versa. But the other side of that, and Guy really talked on it, but with those unit and soldier common capabilities, to where not just the protection tasks that all units have to do that General Stewart mentioned, but also they become non-dedicated air defense. And that brings me to my last section, which is sort of on the doctrine side. So if you look up there in the upper right corner, you'll see sort of a very similar looking graphic to the one that General Stewart led with. So we've incorporated that into the core doctrine to make sure that people understand how this nests. And so that framework is now part of that. Additionally, we've developed counter UAS tactics, techniques, and procedures. We published the first one in August of 2023, and we submitted the first revision 14 months later, and we are now working on our second revision and leveraging the Army Doctrine digital tool in order to be able to make that staffing go faster and make the doctrine more responsive in real time. The last piece I'll say is there are certain parts of this that haven't changed. And that is where the fundamental air defense artillery doctrine, which we've had for decades, still applies. The principles and tenets of air and missile defense apply to this problem set. And some of what we have done is just reinforce that. So mix, mass, mobility, defense in depth, early engagement. These are all things that you'll hear other people talk about, and it's because it's fundamental and we know it works. So bringing that into the doctrine is key. And then also making sure that we as air defenders are thinking about the problem differently. We are now training our officers to think in terms of aerial engagement areas, sort of a 3-dimensional engagement area, which helps everyone understand much more quickly what it is we've been trying to communicate for years. Decide where we're going to kill these things and with what, only instead of on the ground, we're doing it 3-dimensional airspace. So look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Let's move forward. One slide forward. We'll just finish up here before we take questions. So as you've heard, and we talked about the threats, the wide breadth of this threat requires a no one-size-fits-all, right? We can't go down that path. And then when you look now at the multiple ways that these aircraft can navigate, we're finding that even single aircraft have multiple means to navigate. So the problem gets even tougher when you look at it. Multiple methods we talk about, and skills and capabilities. From an Army perspective, and you've heard it throughout this panel, we've got to look where individual soldiers, squads, platoons, up through, we have to give the capability for each. Maybe you don't need to defeat, but you certainly might need a sense and warn. And then at some point you might need the ability to defeat. And when you get into the larger defense aspect of the mission, you're going to need a capability that's going to have to take down a much more difficult threat base. And then lastly, I think Guy hit on this a little bit, competition. And I think if you heard the Secretary speak this morning, certainly innovation, speed, challenging the status quo are incredibly important to winning the next fight. So the Army is dedicated to continuous transformation, working to get